We have multiple updates revolving around the Boston Celtics as Brad Stevens is getting his plans working as he just waived one of the roster spots and now that spot is open. So with recent reports detailing some names, we're going to dive in and explore who could that possibly be to fill in that last roster spot. Plus, the person that was waived from the Boston Celtics recently just signed with a new team. So we're going to go into detail how that could affect JD Davison and his rise with his new franchise that he is going to be taking forth his talents with. We'll be getting into all of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm your host, Bruce Veliz, with my co-host, Patrick Billings. And Patrick, not a lot of news. Once again, it's a little bit drier here, once again with the Boston Celtics in the news land, but at least we got some stuff to at least kind of address and glance over.
Yeah, it's definitely been dry. I think the whole NBA has been pretty dry lately. Hopefully it starts to pick up some more because I want some things to happen. We kind of got a little tease with the whole JD Davison thing going on. We thought something was going to happen quick, but it's kind of just been a lull. It's just dead.
Yep. That is exactly right. And with a lot of teams, still having some roster spots open, that's a little bit confusing. A lot of teams are, kind of closed off with their roster spots. The Celtics were originally. So there are some maneuverings that's still going to have to happen, around training camp with teams still trying to evaluate players to fill in those final roster spots. And that's kind of where the Celtics are now. So we're going to dive in and explore these latest updates here. Patrick, the first one, let's get into it. Talking about Ben Simmons. And what does this ultimately mean for the Boston Celtics? As the rumors have been circulating and swarming around Ben Simmons and his linkage to the Celtics. Nick had some videos on it. We talked about it in our latest live stream last Wednesday. But Patrick, you grabbed this image here, which showcases that for the Boston Celtics, they are heavily favored to be linked to Ben Simmons. And a lot of people have kind of, linked them to this. There's been some reports coming in left and right. There's been talk about, that being the highest betting on the favorites for Ben Simmons. And it would make sense from a roster standpoint, kind of why they would get Ben Simmons to kind of fill in that need of a small ball 5, maybe a rebounding 4, that could be a solid screener and stuff like that. But obviously there's the laziness, the character issues, the injuries that all come alongside Ben Simmons as well. So Patrick, when you hear this news, what is kind of your initial reactions to this?
Well, it's definitely weird because we've definitely been linked to Ben Simmons before. This isn't the first time. So I feel like that's also a reasoning to why the Boston Celtics may be a favorite for Ben Simmons, but it could also be a pretty solid fit for him. Like you said, a good rebounder, maybe the small ball 5. But I think that if you bring him into a Boston locker room, it's definitely different than a lot of other places he's been. The Philadelphia 76ers, we know that locker room probably isn't the best either, with everything going down with Joel Embiid kind of just not being around while he's injured, and just doesn't seem like the best locker room situation in general. And then going to a place like Brooklyn and LA, those aren't the greatest places either. And I think coming to a place like Boston, where you have this whole history and there's a certain mindset to where you have to be to play in Boston, I think that can totally change things. And knowing that he'll actually have a pretty decent role if he ends up joining this team next year, there's a lot of open opportunity. And I think if you're taking a shot on one season, this is the type of shot that you might think that you could take, because we haven't seen much from him. And if he's able to stay healthy and just does well in the locker room as well, obviously that's been an issue, I think that it could turn out well for him and maybe be a turnaround in his career. And everyone just hates on the shooting aspects of things, but he does a lot of other things well as well.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously the little bit of the glaring shooting issue, which in Joe Mazzulla's offense wouldn't be that great. But like you said, not everyone in the Celtics offense used to shoot, and that can be something Ben Simmons could prioritize with his help on this Celtics team. I feel like their fan base is kind of mixed here with their opinions on this situation. There's the 50-50 side of a lot of fans buying into Ben Simmons for what the role he can bring. A lot of people, just even though they see that role, don't think he can necessarily bring it. They would rather the team kind of bring in younger talent, see what they have in Josh Minott, see what they have in Jordan Walsh, to see what they could really identify with. Because it seems like if Ben Simmons were to come here, it would be on a one-year deal. It would look to be a little bit of a bounce back, and then Ben Simmons would outprice himself in free agency the next season for the Boston Celtics, which would be, good for a rebound for Ben Simmons, but not great for this team. And then still trying to find holes and identify things with the salary cap restrictions that the team already does had, it would make it even more difficult for this team to build for a contender. And maybe if you kept a guy like Walsh or Minott to kind of develop, maybe you have those guys be able to lock up and get on more freely contracts, and they're more team friendly. So those are the kind of, I think, benefits of bringing in a Ben Simmons, but also some negatives as well when looking at this Ben Simmons situation. As we mentioned, the Celtics do have that one roster spot open, Patrick. The last thing I'll ask you regarding this Ben Simmons situation, and I want to ask everybody else to let me know their thoughts down below in the comment section as well, is, do you think the Boston Celtics would rather keep this roster spot open, or do you think they would rather fill it with Ben Simmons?
You know what? You say the 50-50, and I think that's totally where they might be at as well, because they have a lot of opportunity now that they're back into that first apron, so they could do a lot more than they were able to. And I think that they're trying to keep their options open at the same time. I would love for them to keep their options open to kind of get more out of the tax and lower in the first apron as well. I think that's just a preference of mine. I do think that Ben Simmons could be a great fit for the things that he does well. But I think just what I would prefer personally, I would like for them to kind of move some pieces around as well and work with that first roster spot. And then as time gets closer to the season, kind of fill out from there. I think that makes a little bit more sense, and I think that's maybe why there's a little bit of a holdup on the Ben Simmons situation. Maybe he's preferring Boston, and there's other options around, and just kind of waiting to see what Boston's looking at. But I really do think that they should look at possible trades and other ways that they could use this regular number one roster spot that's left over.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, in my personal opinion, I'd rather them have the open roster spot going into the season than signing Ben Simmons at this point. Like you mentioned, if they could make another move down the line, an Anthony Simons trade, a Georges Niang trade, able to, open another roster spot potentially, then I would potentially consider it. But obviously there's still the options of, if you have that money, you have that flexibility, and Horford's still available. Obviously those questions arise. So ultimately it doesn't seem like that Simmons saga will be solved soon. Obviously there are other teams interested in him as well. The rumor of the Suns, Kings, and Knicks have all been mentioned. So definitely keep an eye out on Ben Simmons, as his free agency decision might be the next big domino to strike down. But regarding the Boston Celtics, Patrick, we do know that the Celtics waived this open roster spot because they cut JD Davison. And with that being said, this is very interesting, as JD Davison has now found a new home in the NBA, and it's with someone that he has some former experience with, Patrick. If we want to dive in and explore this, JD Davison was waived by the Celtics on Thursday, but he has now agreed to a two-way deal with the Rockets, as agent Corey Markham of the Easy Sports Group told ESPN insider Chris Haynes. Houston doesn't have enough room under the first apron hard cap to offer a standard contract for JD Davison, so he will be coming in on a two-way deal, which is going to be a training camp deal. It seems like that if Davison is able to impress here in this training camp, he will stick with this team and get an opportunity to play for the Houston Rockets, in some instances mainly in their G League, on a two-way deal. The Celtics could not bring JD back on a two-way deal after waiving him, even though he still had 1 year left of eligibility. And the 22-year-old guard, like you mentioned, Patrick, is still young after having 3 seasons in Boston and is still looking to make an impact. When you hear this news, what's your kind of initial reactions for JD Davison here?
Yeah, I was surprised that the Rockets would be the team that scooped him up. It seems like they're pretty full over there, just as full as the Boston Celtics were. Maybe not going into this next season, where we thought he would have had more of an opportunity, but it doesn't seem like there's much opportunity over there for him to go and play. I think that he'll be in the same type of situation he was in Boston the last 3 years. I mean, hopefully he'll be able to get more of an opportunity, but even with their first round draft pick last year, Reed Shepherd, he wasn't even getting a lot of time either. And I think that he's definitely a better player in a lot of aspects of the game. So I think it's making it a little bit more difficult for him to find some time. But hopefully the development down there is great. I mean, Ime Udoka's down there, so a familiar type of face. But other than that, I'm kind of confused by him going to the Rockets, but we don't know what other offers were out there.
Yeah, you mentioned we don't really know what else was out there for JD. A lot of people think that JD is kind of in this tough space in the NBA where he's obviously better than where he's supposed to be in the G League, but is going to have a hard time creating himself to be a key rotational player in the NBA. And some players kind of do fall into this kind of trap here. I'm hoping for JD that he's able to kind of escape that, but with the Rockets, it doesn't seem like it's going to be very likely. You mentioned Reed Shepherd's above him. They still have Fred VanVleet. They have Amen Thompson. They have a lot of players in this guard rotation. It does seem like a guy like JD, maybe even he does have the connection with some ex-Boston Celtics assistants and has some connections with Ime Udoka over there in Houston, might be putting himself into a similar situation like you mentioned in Boston, where he's too slated down below. Now, we could see an opportunity, and I mentioned to this earlier before we started, where on this two-way contract he does impress and could get, find himself getting another contract. Like you mentioned, we don't know what offers were really out there. If there wasn't a tanking team giving him a guaranteed deal, or a team where he thought he could make an impact immediately, maybe this is the best opportunity for JD Davison to obviously mesh with someone that obviously understands his traits and has seen him play and believes in him bringing him into Houston. And then we could see a situation similar to Jared Butler at the trade deadline, where he's traded on a two-way contract to another team that is, tanking, or, maybe isn't tanking now, but is tanking at that second half of this season. And he's able to earn those minutes, showcase his skills, and guarantee himself a guaranteed contract either on that team or on future on endeavors in the NBA as well.
Yeah, and I like how you said that he's definitely a tweener, and I think in baseball, especially with the guy Brett Beatty, he's on the Mets. For people that don't know, a lot of people are kind of call him like a quadruple A type of player, because it goes to triple A and then you're in the majors. So he was kind of a tweener, doing so well down in the minors and then come up and not doing too well. It's kind of where JD Davidson's at a little bit, but he wasn't even getting the time to even play in the NBA. So he's kind of like that quadruple A type of player right now. But hopefully with there being other eyes over there, someone else can see something in him that the Celtics did not see. And like you said, we're maybe trading him somewhere that he kind of just gains eyes from other people, but he's definitely going to be comfortable in the G League, just won MVP, so he knows he's going to be dominant down there. He's going to have a ton of confidence there, but he's still going to have a chip on his shoulder because he's not with Boston anymore, and he's off doing other things in Houston now. So hopefully he'll just get that opportunity. It might be tough. They've got a very deep roster over there in Houston, but maybe there's going to be other eyes out there that see something in him because of this.
Yeah, I like how you put that. I'm hoping for the other eyes out there kind of scouring JD Davison out there on the G League premises for the Houston Rockets, able to, pick him up, bring him to their team, and like I said, similar, have an impact like a Jared Butler did last year with the 76ers, similar for JD Davison this season on a team that has put themselves in a similar position. Well, like I said, thank you guys so much for tuning in, showing your support here on the channel. Patrick and I looked at the latest revolving around Ben Simmons on the Boston Celtics and JD Davison getting waived by this Celtics team and now signing with the Houston Rockets, looking for another opportunity. As you guys know, we try to get daily videos out here on the channel, but it has been a little bit dry. But even with that case, you guys have been absolutely fantastic. You guys have been hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button. We just got to 7.2K subscribers, and we're very, very appreciative of that. So if you do enjoy the content, make sure to stay tuned for everything latest on the Boston Celtics by hitting the subscribe button, letting us know your thoughts, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics.